the chat and just go over this. Okay, so Coach Red Pill is a online personality. He is an American and Chilean citizen who is very active in the manosphere, offering life advice to young males, and he's generally regarded by a lot of people as being something of a grifter. In that he's done a whole bunch of e-bagging. He ran this scam where he tried to get his fans to give him tens of thousands of dollars to publish a book that was allegedly already written. He sent review copies of the book to Godwinson and a couple other people. It turned out that it was like a completely different book. He got like 20 grand off of that. There's all these like shady business dealings and stuff involving him. But he was living in Ukraine, and he tried to like set up a compound or something like that there. But he was living in Kharkov with his wife and kids. Although I couldn't find too much information about his family, and I don't really feel comfortable talking about them too much because they might be in danger. Not that the Ukrainians like watch this channel, but I like you got to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So he's been living there for quite some time, and he is, as with a lot of people in kind of the alt-right dissident right spheres, very pro-Russian. So he lives in Kharkov. He's very pro-Russian. He took a fairly strong stance on the whole Russo-Ukraine war. Obviously, a pro-Russian stance. So he got arrested, detained last year by Ukrainian intelligence. So for those of you who don't know, Ukraine has basically become a totalitarian police state at this point in time. They've banned at least one religious denomination. They banned all the opposition parties. Elections have been canceled. Oh, I thought his family left Ukraine. He was staying on his own. No, okay, maybe they did leave Ukraine. Like I said, I couldn't find anything out about that. Uh, until someone said otherwise, we're going to go with what Cyber Ninja Zero says, and that he was staying on his own. So Ukraine's become a totalitarian police state. There's tons of videos of the draft, the intelligence services and the army just kidnapping random men off the street and forcing them into uniform. There was a recent case where some kid had like, or some teenager had taken photos of a Russian missile strike, and because of that, um, he got from what I had heard, he got drafted and sent off to like Bakhmut or like a high casualty part of the front. Um, I think a recent one, and this is like where the UCU is getting into crossovers. I want to try to do something about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden at some point. But a big part of this whole war is like Biden and Hunter Biden's like corrupt business dealings with Ukraine. Like he Hunter was on the board of directors of a bunch of like corrupt Ukrainian companies that were shoveling money to him. Um, and there was like a Ukrainian prosecutor who was actually investigating it, and Biden made like some aid conditional on like them firing this prosecutor so he would stop investigating his son. But there's just all this insane shit going on. Is my point, and the government will try to cover that up. Lots of people are in jail. Apparently, there's gulags because we're going to get into this. And so yeah. So Coach was arrested. They managed to kick him. He managed to get out of that, and he's kind of been in there for the last year. Now, a couple months back, and we'll watch the clip of this, he got arrested again, and it was very obvious a PR stunt because the Ukrainian like prosecutors or whatever posted a video of him getting arrested, along with a really short supercut of some of the allegedly pro-Russian things that he said. Um, so he disappeared for like the last 2 or 3 months, and a lot of people thought he was dead last year, and a lot of people thought he was dead this time. And yesterday he resurfaced, and when he resurfaced, he was near the border with Hungary on his motorcycle, and he explained that he was pretty sure that It was 2 days before his hearing. He'd been out of jail on bail for a couple weeks now and looking at his options. In that, if he didn't go in and if he didn't escape the country, he was going to be found guilty and sent to a forced labor camp, basically a gulag for the next 6 to 8 years. He's getting up there in years. He's like in his late 50s. He has like heart problems. He probably wouldn't last a year there. It's basically would have been a death sentence. So he was going to try to escape Ukraine and go to Hungary for political asylum. Now, it's important to keep in mind that Gonzalo Lira is an American citizen. He is an American and Chilean citizen. And we will get into the clips in a minute. Now I'm finally kind of getting into the thing. But the State Department has been asked about, they're like, what about Gonzalo? Like, he's an American citizen who got arrested for a speech crime in Ukraine. Are you guys doing anything? And it's almost to St. Peter levels because they denied him the first time. And then today they're like, you know what, we aren't going to do anything about that. We're not going to try to help him. And so before we get into this, there's a lot of different ways. I just kind of want to look at the meta issue. So there's a couple different ways we could look at this. We can look at this as him being as like a meta political issue, as an individual political issue, as a prudence issue, and that kind of thing. So to just start off with, what is my take on all of this? Just my too long didn't read is, if Ukraine really had an issue with him, they should have deported him to the United States and kicked him out of the country. They were well within their rights to do that. I don't know if anyone really would have complained. But the problem is he's not a Ukrainian citizen. He's actually a American and Chilean citizen. I'm not sure which is funnier, comparing Lira to Jesus or the State Department to St. Peter. Well, they denied him twice. They just need one more denial, and then they could be St. Peter. Like, it's bullshit that they arrested him. Remember back in like the 19th century, where if someone attacked like a British or American citizen, they would invade the country and like topple its regime. Remember that? Like, this is the level of just pussies we have. Well, they're not pussies. They just don't like him because he's like a right-wing dissident and he's problematic. So this is a good way to get rid of him. But like the UK, if you killed like a missionary or you killed a consul or something, they would go apeshit. They'd send in an expeditionary force. They'd level everything. Even America used to do shit like that. If someone got captured or something, they'd send in the Marines. They'd go full on balls to the wall, stuff like that. So that's my overall opinion. Is he should have just been deported to the United States, and that would have just resolved everything in a legal and sensible manner. But they're not doing that. So before we get into, so let's just talk about the different scopes of this. So firstly, let's just talk about prudence. So prudence is a thing, and that means making intelligent decisions and not being a retard. And there's not necessarily a moral dimension to this. Like, if you walk around a ghetto at like 11 p.m. and you get robbed, it's not morally right for them to do it. You're not, yeah, it's not morally right for them to rob you. You're not morally bad for doing that, but it's really fucking stupid. Likewise, is Lira getting arrested because he decided to post pro-Russian videos publicly under his name while living in a war zone of a country that's basically gone into full war economy, full-on martial law. And I looked at the Ukrainian Constitution. The Ukrainian Constitution even says within it that the rights to speech and expression can be suspended in the event of an emergency. And I mean, if there's ever been a national emergency, it's your country getting invaded and dismembered by Russia. So, why he thought that this was a good idea is beyond me. It's like if you were to go to Afghanistan and start like, well, maybe not quite as extreme, but like you move to Afghanistan after the what's it called, the Taliban takes over and he started burning Qurans or something. Like, it's just fucking stupid. And he'll be like, well, I'm living in Ukraine. I have a right to do. Like, dude, it doesn't matter what your right is. Like, I get my freedom. I get that it's bullshit. Just why you would go to an active war zone and actively A-log the country who's got into full war economy mode it's just fucking stupid. Also, he probably should have gotten out. Like, why would he move there after 2014? And the revolution, the Euromaidan happened, and the government just went full balls to the wall and started banning all forms of opposition. I mean, it's not like this is a new thing. They've been banning opposition parties for years. Like in 2014, they banned the Party of Regions, the biggest single party in the country, and so, but he thought it was a good idea to stay there and to provoke Ukraine. Also, in this video, he's like surprised that Ukraine is like this corrupt third world shithole. Like, everybody knows Ukraine is a corrupt third world shithole. It's even more. It's probably even more corrupt than Russia, and that's saying something, because Russia is infamously corrupt. The entire like Ukrainian economy since this war started is just a kleptocracy. It's just literally aid money that goes down into like a pit. And whenever like they get more money from the UN, like some Republicans were like, could we do an audit of where the money actually went? And Biden's like, no, guys, we can't look into it. We can't look into where the money went. It just disappeared. But the thing is, like, the reason that I don't know if he did, but like Andrew Tate and all these people moved to Eastern Europe and moved to these shitholes is so they can get away with stuff in a lot of cases. It's because there's corrupt governments, they can run their scams, they don't have to pay US taxes, they can fuck underage prostitutes. I don't know if he did that or not, but that's like why they go there. And it's like, why the fuck would you move to Ukraine post 2014? Like where there's an active low intensity civil war going on. I don't know. Once again, I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm just saying it was retarded that he was even there, to be perfectly honest. So I don't know. Cyber Ninja Zero says, look, Argent, the ship posting cannot be stopped and cannot be contained. Now, I had said something in my post earlier that I think it's worth talking about again, because I try to be real with you guys and I try to be honest. So there's the question of, does Ukraine have the right to do this? And I don't think it's that simple, because a lot of people here will be saying, free speech is good. We support free speech. He shouldn't have been arrested for what he was doing because he was just expressing an opinion. And here's the thing, though. Maybe you're completely consistent on it, but a lot of the people who are crying over this are the same people who said it was like based when Hungary kicked out the Soros institutions, who applauded when Russia banned G-slur propaganda and tried to convince kids to gender transition, and when certain people banned critical race theory, and all this kind of stuff, and is happy whenever China censors paused movies. So to be internally consistent, I think you just have to consider that for a minute. He was an active subversive inside of their country while they were in the middle of a deterministic civil war. And I don't know. I just like, as a general principle, it like when we get back to the whole like Lincoln thing, and people are like, Lincoln decided to suspend parts of the Constitution during the Civil War. Like, that was a legitimate, actual crisis. The country was like falling apart. It wasn't like, OMG, there was like one school shooting or done by some crazy person who was on drugs. Oh, it's somebody spray painted the swastika. We need to shut it all down. No, like the country's actually being dismembered and invaded by Russia. I mean, if that is not an emergency that justifies suspending rights and arresting people, I don't know what else. So it's kind of funny that he keeps yapping. Are you talking about me or? Um, okay, we'll get to it in a minute. I'm just saying. The thing is, though, the biggest issue is Ukraine is held up as being this paragon of democracy. That Ukraine is a free society, it's a liberal democracy. We have to stand up against Russian tyranny. Um, like Russia hasn't banned the Communist Party. Keep this in mind. Ukraine banned the Communist Party of Ukraine. Russia has not banned the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. It has not been banned. Um, uh, like, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there for a minute. Just some stuff is popping up in the chat. Promo is part of the wider grift. What do you mean by the wider grift? Just give me a second and let me look at the chat because I can't. It's not updating properly for some reason. Okay. He should have got himself out and loved out. Okay, being for Chile. Ukraine is ironically a perfect example of the logical endpoint of democracy. I can only hope that this particular promo is part of the wider grift. Are you talking about me or are you talking about him? Um, but anyways, that's just my thought. I'm just pointing that out. So let's start getting into this stuff, and we'll see what CRP has to say about what Gonzalo has to say about this and that. I put together a little playlist. So we're going to start out. Let me know if the audio balance is okay. So this is what was put out by the Ukrainian government, to the best of my understanding.
Vladimir Putin, he is, for all intents and purposes, what you would call an ethnic nationalist, but he's not an imperialist. I'm telling you right now.
I mean, is he an ethnic nationalist? I don't know. It's that's an interesting question.
These people are neo-fascist, neo-Nazis. The West is the one puppeteering Zelensky, right? The Kiev regime also constantly shelling the regions of the Donbass. 16,000 people died after 2015 up until the start of this conflict. 1,000 children or 800 children were killed.
Okay, so he said Putin is an ethnic nationalist, not an imperialist. He also said that they shelled the Donbass, which is something. I think it was cut out of this. The other thing that was part of the original Supercut is he talked about how Ukraine was was like a Nazi state. I mean, Ukraine isn't a Nazi state. Have they integrated certain fascist groups as part of their armed forces? Yes. Yes, they did. Ukraine is not a Nazi state, though. It's retarded to say that. Okay, so here is the video. This was put out by the Ukraine. Like this was not put out by just random shit posters. Look at that cringe. Fist bumps the receptionist. I hope I don't get a copyright strike from this music. They're like, oh, he has all these Putin books in his place. It's illegal. They dox his family. They post the picture of his kids. That's cool. Him away to prison.
Hey, how's it going?
So that happened earlier this year, and so this question was asked about
Statement on it.
By a journalist who was actually doing his job.
Statement on it. A U.S. citizen who was residing in Ukraine has been arrested, and that he was a California-born man. He was in the past like a Business Insider contributor, and he had a YouTube channel. He was an outspoken critic of Zelensky's regime. The Ukrainian SBU released a press release saying he was arrested for justifying Putin's invasions. Ultimately, it added up to speech. And I spoke with Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat, and he said he urges the State Department to engage its authorities to, work out some sort of negotiation to get him released. So are you guys aware of this? How do we feel about our allies, detaining U.S. citizens for speech abroad?
So I will say in general that we're aware of the report. We obviously support the exercise of freedom of speech anywhere in the world, and I'll leave it at that.
So you guys aren't working to get him released?
I'm going to leave my comments.
No comment, guys. No comment. The State Department. Why would they admit to know about that? Like, yeah, we know, and we're not doing shit. Like, they'll probably make some nonsense up, like, oh, Ukraine decided to do that. We couldn't tell them. It's like, dude, they arrested your... Okay, I get that he was a retard. I get that he shouldn't have been doing it. But, like, you guys can't let Ukraine cuck you this way. Just get him expelled back to America. Just get them to deport him, and he can go back to posting in California or Chile or whatever. It's just fucking stupid. But yeah, so they said that. So we had that, and we're going to say what the State Department said today. Let me just see if I can find it. Okay. This is from today.
So back in May, I asked you about Gonzalo Lira. He was the U.S. citizen arrested in Ukraine for posting dissident content online, and you told me the State Department was aware of his arrest in May. And we learned last night through a series of tweets by him that he had been tortured in the Ukrainian prison, and he was now on a motorcycle with a broken rib trying to flee the Hungarian border. And so I'm wondering, if this is true, given the State Department knew of his arrest and his detention, how has this been allowed to occur? We have a U.S. citizen being detained and perhaps tortured in the prison of one of our strongest allies.
Well, you lost me with the perhaps, and if this is true, I think I'd want to verify those reports before I commented on it. Alex, go ahead.
In other words, we don't care. We don't care that they arrested and put one of our citizens in jail. We're cool with that. That's neat. So we're gonna get to the featured video now. So this is what Gonzalo put up earlier today. Oh no, 2 days ago. Now, there is some evidence to suggest that he did get arrested again, and we will look at that in a minute. Let's see here. Okay, so let me know if the audio balance is okay.
Hey, how's it going? It's been a while. I hope you've had a good time. I didn't have such a good time. I spent 9.5 weeks in prison here in Ukraine. I've been out on bail since July 6th. Today is July 31st. And to prove the time, I just checked on my subscription. Defense Politics Asia, which is a pretty good channel, just put out a video called Niger on the Brink of Regional War. That should prove the time that I'm recording this video. Now, at the same time that I'm posting this video, I'm posting a long thread on my Twitter account. My Twitter account is Gonzalo Lira 1968. Gonzalo Lira 1968, one word altogether. And in that, I discuss what has happened to me over the past 3 months in some detail. I also include the indictment against me
that
Let's just go take a look at that. Let me see if I can find the thing. Okay, here's the English version. No, that's the Ukrainian version. Where's the English version? Okay, maybe that's the English version. Nope, that's Ukrainian. Okay, is accused of committing criminal offenses. The production, distribution of materials containing the justification, recognition as legitimate, denial of the armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, which began in 2014, including by presenting the armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine as an internal civil conflict, justifying recognizing as legitimate the temporary occupation of part of the territory of Ukraine, glorifying the people who carried out the armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, which began in 2014. And I'm not going to read through the rest of it. I think it explicitly states that he didn't do anything.
that I'm going to be tried on. I'm going to be tried on Wednesday, August 2nd, the day after tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I posted both the original Ukraine language version.
Yeah, so as Cyber Ninja Zero points out, this is his second channel. He lost his first channel because the Ukrainian officials decided to they just confiscated his Google accounts.
And the translation. The translation was by the court-appointed translator, so I have no idea if it's accurate or not. Those of you who speak Ukraine will be able to give a better sense as to whether that translation is accurate, but that's besides the point. I put up the entire indictment in both the original and the translation so that you can see exactly what I was charged with and imprisoned for. Now, the charges are very serious because the penalty is 5 to 8 years in a prison labor camp. I'm 55 years old, and some of you may know I have a fairly serious heart condition. I'm not going to survive 5 to 8 years. And I've already been told by people who would know that I will be found guilty. And because of circumstances, it would be convenient for me to serve out that sentence, for me to basically disappear. Disappear in a prison labor camp and, potentially die there, either naturally or unnaturally, as the case may be. Now, in the tweet thread, I go into more or less what happened. I composed that tweet thread last night. It took me 2 hours to do it because there was a lot of information and, keeping it to 25 tweets, it's tough. But anyway, the upshot is that I was accused of being a pro-Russian propagandist.
I mean, dude, you kind of were. Like, let's be real here.
Basically, cut through the legalese, it was basically that. I was also accused of denying the Russian invasion, which is laughable. I mean, I've always said that the Russians invaded. It's self-evident, I never denied that fact. They said that I was justifying this invasion that was unprovoked, and of course, we all know that it was provoked. It didn't.
Dude, why would you say that? This video, fuck. Let's just go back a second. Dude, just...
This invasion that was unprovoked, and of course, we all know that it was provoked. It didn't come out of the blue. It wasn't that the Russians one day decided, hey, let's just invade Ukraine. No, it was provoked, and I gave a very detailed explanation as to why it was provoked in a video that really chapped the ass of the prosecutor's office, apparently. The video of mine called Ukraine a Primer, which of course goes into the backstory and the history of relations between these two countries.
Dude, why are you bringing this shit up now? I mean, it just looked like... I don't know.
And why they wound up going to war, as they are currently embroiled in. So anyway, the point is, I'm going to be found guilty. And because of things that happened, corruption and extortion that happened in prison against me.
No, like, I know the trials, it's bullshit. I'm just saying, like, this isn't the time to, like, to bring that up.
I will be found guilty. I will not get a suspended sentence. I will have to serve out my term and likely die in this prison labor camp. Shit. Sorry, hang on.
It's going full of rainy here.
Sorry about that. I don't have 3 hands. Anyway, so realizing that my court date is the day after tomorrow, and realizing some other information that was quite strange, I was granted bail after innumerable hurdles, because when I was originally arrested, I was nominally supposed to get a lawyer, have access to a lawyer, be able to call my loved ones and arrange for bail. Now, insofar as lawyers, I have lawyers up the wazoo. Insofar as loved ones, not as many as lawyers.
No, I just mean it's like if people are distributing this in the West, people who might be sympathetic. I just don't think it's the time to double down. If you want to call me a pussy.
Lawyers, but I have quite a few that I care about very deeply, most especially my small children. For those of you who don't know, I have 2 children. Veronica, who is 10, she just turned 10. She turned 10 while I was in prison. And my son, Ramon, who is 8. And of course, I wanted to talk to them, but I was not allowed to speak to them during the entirety of my stay in prison. And of course, I wasn't allowed to post bail, even though I had the means to post bail. Now, let me explain that situation, which was very interesting. You see, nominally, on the first day that I was arrested, I could have posted bail. But I was not given the opportunity to do so, to contact the people who would have the cash available to post my bail. It wasn't that much. It was $11,000, which I don't want to sound arrogant. $11,000 is quite a bit of money for most people. I am blessed by the good fortune of having the means to put together that kind of money at a moment's notice. And so I could have posted bail on the very first day, but the authorities simply didn't allow me to do it, even though they said I could. Now, I was imprisoned briefly for 2 nights. I was in interrogatory prison number 1, that's the name of it. And then after that...
Okay, I just don't think it... Okay, fine. You can call me a pussy. Fine, I'm a pussy. I just don't think if, like, people are going to be putting political pressure on their member of or whatever, and send them this video, that helps. That's all I'm saying.
I spent the remaining 9 weeks, exactly 9 weeks, in CISO prison, which is also an investigative prison. And that is a prison where individuals who have been accused of a crime are held while their case is investigated.
You're the one who's always saying, don't be fake and GSOC. Well, there's a difference between being fake and just not mentioning things. Like...
by either the police or the SBU who has arrested them. The SBU, for those of you who don't know, is the State Security Services of Ukraine. They are basically the descendants of the KGB, okay? So anyway, I wasn't allowed to post bail, and it was only through fairly heroic measures and a lot of pressure, political pressure from the government of Chile and apparently the State Department as well, because they...
I mean, I don't think they ever had habeas corpus in Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine's a corrupt shithole, like, we know this. It's always been that way. It's always been shitty.
Didn't seem to like the fact that I wasn't being allowed to post bail. I spoke with representatives of the U.S. Embassy 3 times during the 9 weeks I was there.
Could he not have gone to the U.S. Embassy? Like, isn't the U.S. Embassy theoretically U.S. ground? Like, is he not allowed to go there to get asylum? I don't.
And they didn't. They just gave me bromides. They made no effort to pull me out, you know. I mean, if only I'd been a black lesbian druggie or a transgender grifter, then maybe they would have done something. Well, no, if I'd been one of those two things, I would have been out instantly. But of course, since I'm not, yeah, and since a couple of people who would know have told me that Vicki Newland actually knows about me and hates my guts. So there you go. So anyway, the point is,
I would not be surprised if the State Department. I would not be surprised if, like, Zelensky personally knew about Gonzalo, and yeah, he should have left in Italy. I mean, it's the whole thing is just fucking like stupid.
there was the appearance of unfairness, so eventually I was allowed to post bail. But the bail conditions were very interesting because I had to surrender my passports. I had to wear an electronic monitor. I wasn't allowed to leave the city of Kharkov or the country.
I looked that up. I didn't realize that the state could take away your passport. Just because I've never been in a situation like this, honestly. But that's pretty fucked. Like, if they take your ID away, how are you supposed to prove your citizenship if you're not allowed to have a if they take your passport? Like, that's fucked.
And they also confiscated, of course, all of my computers, my iPad, my iPhone. They also confiscated about $9,000 that I had as emergency cash, you know, the kind of cash you have around just in case of anything. Well, they confiscated that. And they confiscated a bunch of my documents, specifically my driver's license, my Chilean identity card, and the registration cards for my motorcycles. I don't own a car, by the way. And so
They're just taking away all this personal information. How are you supposed to prove your identity then, if literally every piece of ID has been taken?
So I was told in no uncertain terms that I had to stay in Kharkov and not leave the city under any circumstances, and of course not leave the country. And I would get this ankle monitor, and I would have to surrender my passports. But when I posted bail and was released.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't paying. I forget if he mentions later it was like $8,000 in cash that was lying around, which is kind of weird. My passports were returned to me. I didn't get any kind of ankle monitor. And a few days later, I went to the SBU offices. That's a nice thing about that's the nice thing about corrupt governments. Sometimes the corruption and incompetence works in your favor.
Of the investigator who had investigated my case.
Who's a good kid.
And he returned my driver's license, my Chilean ID card, and my registration documents for my motorcycles.
Who's a good kitty.
As you can see, there's my bike. I don't know if you can see it properly. There you go. And so, this was very interesting to me. Now, last year, I was detained by the SBU.
What do you think,
also
Ray?
for videos that
You
were
think you
very
should have been
critical
detained?
of what was going on. And
Ray thinks he shouldn't have been detained.
they investigated me because they thought, curiously enough, that I was some sort of Russian agent. Okay, of course, I'm not a Russian agent, you know. And
I wish Russia would pay me. It's an open invitation. George Soros, you want to cut me a check? I'll do that. Putin, you want to cut me a check? Do that. Yeah, Conentus, how can you demand a foreign national surrender their passport? So they do that so that the person can't leave the country, which I think is kind of fucked, to be honest. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right.
I'm just a regular guy living in Ukraine who saw what was happening, was horrified by this war, and thought that the only solution was to sue for peace because it's inevitable. Because if a man such as myself, 55 years old, 83 kilos, not in the best of shape, gets in the ring with Mike Tyson in his prime, I mean, we know how it's going to end, right? Yeah, that was pretty much the situation insofar as the Ukraine and Russian conflict is concerned. And perhaps I did not emphasize this enough in my videos, but the purpose of my videos was to point out how horrifying the war was, how detrimental to the Ukraine people and the Ukrainian nation it was, and the only solution was to find a...
Okay, that's fair. I would be putting him in Gulag. So George Soros, I'm open. You want to send me, drop me a line? I'm sure you have all my personal information. Check and I'll start.
peace settlement of some sort, of any sort, to prevent the complete destruction of the Ukraine nation and the Ukraine people. Well, that happened. About a third of the population of Ukraine has left the country. 20% of it is controlled and will be annexed by the Russians, and there's no doubt in my mind that they intend to capture much more territory of the Ukraine nation, probably up to the Dnieper River, and take everything east of it, and that will include Odessa, of course.
Is this going to be like the end of World War II, where like the Russian forces come across the concentration camp, and you have like the skeletal Coach Red Pill there, and like they've made fertilizer out of his hair and stuff like that, and the Russians have to like feed him emergency rations because it's been the lira cost.
And Ukraine will be broken. It's inevitable at this point, unfortunately. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make is that last year I was detained. I was investigated to see if I was a Russian agent. They realized I wasn't. And I was let go. But I was told in no uncertain terms that I could not leave the city or the country while my case was investigated. And me, being a very law-abiding citizen, because the extent of my criminal career up to this point was that in New York City in 2000, in the year 2000, I was living in Lower Manhattan, and I had a dog, and I would walk the dog without a leash. And one time I got a ticket, $50, which I didn't pay. That's the extent of my law-breaking career. I'm very much a person who believes in civil society and following the rules. And
I very much believe that we live in a society. Dude, I bet any amount of money there's a lot of shady shit you've done in the past. It's just...
following the law. And so I was told that I couldn't leave the country. I couldn't leave the city even, which I wanted to because I wanted to be near my family. So I was a good boy. Later in prison, in CISO, I told this to some of the other prisoners there, because they're not inmates, because none of them have been convicted. Their cases are all being investigated, and some of these investigations take years, plural. Okay? One man I knew had been there for, as he said very proudly, 3 years and 3 months. Another had been there 6 years. Because what they do is that they arrest you and charge you, and they start their investigation, and they'll get around to the investigation when they get around to it. So a lot of times people just sit there forever. And that's basically the justice system in Ukraine. So anyway, the point is that my case was expedited. Prisoners couldn't believe that my case was investigated in a month, exactly a month. By the 31st of May, they had completed their investigation of me.
Implying there was an investigation.
Being this evil Russian propagandist, and the indictment was drawn up, which, as I said, you can read on Twitter, and the thread that I posted at the same time that I'm posting this video. And where was I? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, when I was in prison, and I told the other prisoners how I'd been detained in April of 22, and told them no uncertain...
I wonder if he yelled, "What am I being detained?"
in terms not to leave the country. The prisoners laughed, and they said, "You idiot. They were leaving the door open for you to leave. They wanted you to leave. You know, less hassle for them."
That could be the case. That could not be the case. I mean, I don't really know. Like, it could have been another... Like, you don't know. I don't know how these third world countries work. They could have been doing that so then they'd have a reason to arrest him if he was trying to leave the country. Go back.
"You idiot." And where was I? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, when I was in prison and I told the other prisoners how I'd been detained in April of 22 and told them no uncertain terms not to leave the country, the prisoners laughed and they said, "You idiot. They were leaving the door open for you to leave. They wanted you to leave, you know, less hassle for them." And me, of course, you know, retrospectively, it's obvious, but at the time...
Because the police never shoot anyone and say that that person was resisting arrest. That never happens. They never say the person was running away.
I said...
Especially in, like, corrupt third world countries with no body cams and no accountability.
No, I can't do anything. They're telling me to stay, so I must stay, you know, like an idiot. That's simple as that. So anyway, insofar as my current, status of being out on bail, and the judge was very clear that it was very explicit. I couldn't leave the city, I couldn't leave the country, and I had to surrender my passports. I have two, the American and Chilean. And of course, they also confiscated these documents for my transportation. And yet, when I was released on bail, they gave me all the stuff back. They didn't put the electronic monitor, and they allowed me to keep...
Okay, corruption is a fiction, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, I would be a conspiracy theorist if I said there was fraudulent elections in Ukraine. All the elections in Ukraine are 100% legitimate.
Keep my passports, and what's more... And where was I? I lost my train of thought. When I was in prison, and I told the other prisoners how I'd been detained in April of 22 and told them no uncertain terms not to leave the country, the prisoners laughed and they said, "You idiot. They were leaving the door open for you to leave. They wanted
I don't
you to
know.
leave. You know, less hassle for them." And me, of course, you know, retrospectively, it's...
Okay, I'm just going to ask the chat. Was that them trying to hint that he should leave the country, or was that them trying to lure him into a trap so they would have an excuse to execute, or arrest him, or just to have more evidence on him, because then they could say he was breaking his bullshit bail conditions. I don't know. I can't really blame him, to be honest.
It's obvious, but at the time, I said, no, I can't do anything. They're telling me to stay, so I must stay, you know, like an idiot. That's simple as that. So anyway, insofar as my current, status of being out on bail, and the judge was very clear that it was very explicit. I couldn't leave the city, I couldn't leave the country, and I had to surrender my passports. I have two, the American and Chilean.
No, you know what this was? This was an invitation for bribes. I think that's like he misread the situation. And what the judge was really saying is you can leave if you give me enough money. That's price.
And of course, they also confiscated these documents for my transportation. And yet, when I was released on bail, they gave me all the stuff back. They didn't put the electronic monitor, and they allowed me to keep my passports. And what's more, when I went to the SBU offices to retrieve my driver's license and my registration cards and my Chilean identity card, they asked me, you know, and do you have any identification other than this stuff? Oh yeah, I have my passports. Oh, and you didn't surrender them? No, I have it right here.
Can you imagine if DSP was in Ukraine and he got arrested and he was the one making this video? Oh boy. And then the Ukrainian government who was to figure out his finances.
Here, I said, like an idiot. And they were like, oh, okay. And so these are the options that I have. Since I know I'm going to be found guilty and I will be sent to a prison labor camp, and because of events that happened in prison where I was extorted for a sizable amount of money, I will be sent to a prison labor camp come my court date. That's inevitable, okay? and there won't be any suspended sentence, and there won't be any mercy, all because of my YouTube videos. I mean, I want to emphasize this, you know. In the indictment, if you read it, you will see that the prosecutor himself says that I committed no crime against any person or property, and that my crimes are literally speech crimes, saying things that the government doesn't like. Huh?
So he'll talk about it. Is there really no way he couldn't have, like, defected to the... I guess because of the minefield. That he could have, like, surrendered to Russian forces or something like that. I guess. I don't know. Like, some Ukrainian soldiers seem to be able to surrender to Russian forces.
Ukraine is supposed to be this big democracy that it wants to join the European Union and because it has European values, European democratic values. What higher value does a democracy have than free speech? My case is all about free speech. And I spent, 2 months and change in a maximum security prison. And by the way...
Yeah, you're right. We could have had an anime crossover between we could have had Prigozhin and Gonzalo Lira in a buddy comedy film where they both go to Niger and have like some wacky journey.
When I say, okay, well, let me finish that point. I spent 2 months and change in a maximum security prison over things that I said, opinions I gave regarding publicly available information that is undisputed. This is the epitome of free speech, and yet I went to prison for it, and I will likely go 5 to 8 years to a prison labor camp where, by the way, everybody in the CISO prison, the investigative prison where I was at, none of them wanted to go to that labor camp because they all said it's a death sentence, okay? And so I'm going to be sent for 5 to 8 years because of YouTube videos.
I like how Ukraine banned the Communist Party and did all this like desodification or whatever, Sovietication. And now they're bringing the gulags back.
Videos that I made. Is that democratic? Does that sound like, European values to you? Huh?
I mean, once again, like, I'm not saying that it's not bullshit, but like, this is the way Ukraine's been for like the last 8 years. I don't get why this is a surprise to him.
Sorry if this video is a little bit disorganized, because I'm a little bit stressed out, but the choices I realize are two. Either go to a prison labor camp and die there. Because like I said, I'm 55, I have a heart condition, so as it is, I'm not going to live much longer. And 5 to 8 years at a prison labor camp, I'll be dead. I'll be killed off by the labor, I suppose. And if not, I will be killed on the inside, because what happened while I was at CISO, I realized that let me backtrack a little. While I was in CISO, I was extorted for a great deal of money, $70,000 to be precise. Now, how did this happen?
So this whole thing sounds kind of shady, but this is Ukraine, so this probably happened.
Well, through various clues and various information that
there's a story that Ralph told once about how he was like, I think 8 years old. I think he was like 10 years old or something. He stole his parents' car and was driving it around West Memphis. And when he was in court, he started talking with the judge about like what was on wrestling the previous night. And the whole court case was just them talking about wrestling. And then he got off with like community service. So that level of like white trashness is this
I acquired,
like,
which I intend to describe in detail in a book about the whole thing if I live long enough to write that book. But anyway, the point is, I realized that once they arrested me on May 1st, the SBU, of course, confiscated my computers, and they got into all of my accounts, which they hadn't done before. Because what had happened was that one of the computers, I had left it in my motorcycle, and when they detained me that time, they hadn't realized that I had left it in my motorcycle.
They're just that
Because, you know, it has these, I don't know if you can see them, it has these suckers, right? And so, in that computer, that was my personal computer, with my personal, they're all personal computers, but I mean, with my personal information, including my accounts. And while I was in prison, the SBU looked through my accounts and they realized that I'm not poor. Okay, I don't want to say characterize it in any other way, but I have access to a lot of funds, and the way I live is fairly simply and low key. I don't even own a car because I was fortunate enough to earn a great deal of money as a writer when I was very, very young.
Okay, there's a certain degree of press X to get on this, but we'll just go with it.
And so I went through that phase of buying all the toys and all the crap that you really don't need to make your life happy. But I was young and I thought that I needed that crap, and so I bought it, and then I realized, of course, it didn't make me particularly happy, and now as a much older and hopefully wiser man, I don't have any of that crap. I don't need it. And so the SBU had assumed that I was just some poor schmuck, but when they saw my accounts, they realized that I wasn't a poor schmuck. And so what happened was that they got the prisoners in CISO, in one of the 4 cells I was in.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna say something extremely mean. What are the odds that he was bragging about how much money he had? Like, let's be fucking. The odds that they said that he was like a bum because he looks like a bum, and like, no, I got all this money, and he was showing them like his bank account and saying, "I'm fucking rich, and you people are all like just fucking like third world hillbillies."
In the last one, the worst one. It was 7 other prisoners and myself. And as soon as I arrived, they beat the shit out of me. And they tortured me that time. It started on June 21st at 1 p.m. and it lasted 30 hours. It included beatings, it included sleep deprivation. You know, I've been beaten up, so it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's not fun. It hurts, yeah, sure. But, you know, when I was young, you know, yeah, I got into street fights and crap like that. And sometimes I won, and sometimes I got the shit kicked out of me. So the beatings I could handle, but when they started getting really, really pissed off at me, because I kept insisting that I was just a journalist and I didn't have a pot to piss in, and I had no money, and I could not get them $70,000, thinking that they'd lay off, thinking too and realizing too that extortionists, when you give in to them and you pay them, then they'll come back the next day and want more, and they'll beat you some more for more money, right? And so, of course, I denied the fact. I said I was just a poor writer, that I was living in Ukraine because it was so cheap and all the rest of it, you know, poor me, I don't have a pot to piss in. But they knew, and they kept insisting, and a very specific number, 70,000. And what really unnerved me was that in the hour, maybe 25, 26, 2 of these thugs held my head, and one of them used a toothpick to scratch the whites of my left eye. And the other guy, the guy who actually spoke a little bit of English, said, "You can read with just one eye, right?" Not gonna lie, that really freaked me out. Anyway, after about 30 hours of this, I realized that there was no escape for me. By the way, the guards came in because they do a nightly check-in to see that everything's copacetic, you know? And the thing is, see, I saw that these guys had bribed those guards, bribed them with cigarettes and other things, because there's no money in the prison, but there are, you know, little perks, little this and that, knickknacks and whatnot. And so the guards who did the nightly check-in were on the take, and they were in league with the with the gangsters, the thugs, in my prison cell. And so I realized that this could last indefinitely. And so while I still had all my marbles,
I think that guy
deprivation
is literally like one of the first people I've ever actually banned from my chat.
really affects you. And I've just, out of idle curiosity, because I'm that way, a few years ago when I was living in Amsterdam, I tried to see how long I could go without any sleep. I went, I want to say like 60 hours. I remember being surprised by the hallucinations which came on around after 40 hours or so. And I thought they were pretty cool, but after about 60 hours, that's when I was just out of it. And it was just out of idle curiosity that I did it, because like I said, I'm kind of weird, you know? What the fuck can I say? And so after 30 hours, yeah, I was hallucinating a little bit. You know, I was like seeing writing on the floor when there was none, of course, and little things like that, like little wormies moving around, you know? But anyway, the point is, the important...
Okay, I want to pull the chat. Do you guys believe this story? That's what I want to know. Is this story, did this happen? I'm just going to pull the chat. Did this story happen the way he's describing it, or is this like just a schizo post? I'll let you decide.
Important point, I realized I'd have to give up the ghost because nobody was going to save me. And so I started negotiating and stretching out this payment that I had to make. Because, you see, my bank accounts, in order to make a transfer, you need a little device that's a token that generates a number. So it's impossible to transfer any money without that little token. And those tokens are apps in my iPad and phone. And on top of that, because there's so much hacking going on from Ukraine, my banks, the websites to my banks to check certain accounts, the big ones, right? You can't access them from Ukraine. And my bank had to do special carve-outs, specific...
I'm not gonna lie, a lot of this shit, like with money he talks about, sounds really shady. Like, when he starts explaining like the different accounts.
IP addresses that are tied to specific locations. And
okay, let's just go back and start this.
So much hacking going on from Ukraine. You need a little device that's a token that generates a number. So it's impossible to transfer any money without that little token. And those tokens are apps in my iPad and phone. And on top of that, because there's so much hacking going on from Ukraine, my banks, the websites to my banks to check certain accounts, the big ones, right? You can't access them from Ukraine. And my bank had to do special carve-outs, specific IP addresses that are tied to specific locations. And that's why, and those locations, of course, were far from Cecil Prison. That's why it was impossible for me to access those accounts, but it was possible for me to access a PayPal account that I had. Now, a PayPal account, it had quite a bit of money. It had...
Okay. I just wanted to pull the chat. How much money do you think he had in his PayPal account? According to how he frames this, he didn't even know that he like had this money. Guess how much money he just had randomly sitting around in his PayPal account that he had forgotten about. I'm not gonna lie, this is like the most the least believable part of this entire story. Okay, I'm just gonna gonna give it a second. Okay, 20K. I think I said earlier in this program how much it was. Okay, all right.
$143,000 because it's just money that I've earned on my Patreon. And it's great money, but I do the Patreon more for the ego trip. And
Wait a minute.
getting more-
Let's just go back.
It had quite a bit of money. It had those accounts, but it was possible for me to access a PayPal account that I had. Now, a PayPal account, it had quite a bit of money. It had $143,000 because it's just money that I've earned on my Patreon. And it's great money, but I do the Patreon more for the ego trip and getting more subscribers as opposed to needing the money. And so the money had just accumulated. I was just sitting there. And the SBU obviously found it and saw it.
Like, dude, who has 100? Like, I don't know. Chat, is that like a little bit shady that he just happened to have like $140,000 just sitting around in his like pay? I don't know. That sounds kind of here. I'm gonna promote a couple people to mod, I guess. Gonna make a couple regulars mods, I think. Okay, so I don't know, guys. That sounds really sus.
And that's why they were asking for that very specific number of 70,000, which is just about half of the amount of money in that account. Now, I don't know if they wanted to be nice about it and just take half, or if they were going to take half.
No, but this was just his PayPal. This was just a small part of his net worth. He had all the rest of his money in like these shady offshore bank accounts. Like come on, man. I don't know. I find that hard to kind of believe.
And they were going to pass me along to somebody else who would take the other half. I have no idea. But the point is, it became clear to me that the SBU contacted these gangsters, probably through the prison guards at CISA, and figured out, or basically had the prisoners in the fourth cell that I was in do the actual dirty work of getting the money out of me, see? Because you see, the guards, they never beat any of the prisoners. No, it's the prisoners who beat the other prisoners. In fact, after this 30-hour session, one of the thugs who had really hurt me, I mean, he hit me pretty badly, especially on the chest. He hit me like right here on the sternum, repetitively and so hard that it left this huge bruise. And by the way, the cell boss, the guy higher, berated him for having left a mark on me, because of course, the kind of torture that they want to do doesn't leave a mark. That's the point of it. See, because if it leaves a mark, then it's evidence, you see? So anyway, that prisoner who beat me so relentlessly over that 30-hour stretch, after, as we're trying to figure out a way to get this cash to these gangsters, these thugs, contacted these gangsters, probably through the prison guards at CISA, and figured out, or basically...
Yeah, like, I agree with you, Cyber Ninja. If he had these wounds, he should have, like, showed them.
Had the prisoners in the fourth cell that I was in do the actual dirty work of getting the money out of me, see? Because you see, the guards, they never beat any of the prisoners. No, it's the prisoners who beat the other prisoners. In fact, after this 30-hour session, one of the thugs who had really hurt me, I mean, he hit me pretty badly, especially on the chest. He hit me like right here on the sternum, repetitively and so hard that it left this huge bruise.
It's gone.
And by the way, the cell boss, the guy higher, berated him for having left a mark on me, because of course, the kind of torture that they want to do doesn't leave a mark. That's the point of it. See, because if it leaves a mark, then it's evidence, you see?
See, here's the problem with this. Is all of this possible or plausible? Yes. Just, I don't know, I'm sorry, guys. Just the whole about, oh, it's probably healed by now, okay. Just the like who the fuck has $150,000 just sitting in their PayPal account? It's like, oh, I hadn't even realized it was there. I don't know, dude. That's just shady as fuck.
So anyway, that prisoner who beat me so relentlessly over that 30-hour stretch, after, you know, as we're trying to figure out a way to get this cash to these gangsters, these thugs.
Okay, what percentage of this story do people think is true? Like, is this entirely true? Is this like 80% true? Is it 50% true? Is this whole thing just bullshit? I'm gonna go with this is probably about 80% true. There's some weird stuff to this story, but Ukraine, like, I've been doing UCU videos for like months now, and stuff is just so insane there. Like, I could see a lot of this stuff. Like, we've had some crazy shit happen. But I don't know.
He came to me spontaneously and apologized. You know, it wasn't his idea, but he had to do it, you know, because he was a prisoner. He'd been in CISO prison for 2 years already. So, you know, it's not that he wanted to do this, but that he had to do it. And, you know, I understood, you know, because that's the way it operates. Now, I'm telling you all of this so that you understand my situation. My case originally started as a free speech issue.
Okay, so let's see here things that actually happened. I do think he was arrested twice. The fact that they looked up the video, I think is true. The Gulag sounds possible. That might just be to get sympathy, but you know what? I'm going to say 75%. I think a lot of the details are probably made up or exaggerated. I think like the basis though is probably true. Just because it lines up with everything else.
But because of the SBU and the inherent corruption of the SBU and the criminal justice system in Ukraine, I will definitely be sent to a prison labor camp where I will most certainly die. And so I decided that the smart thing was...
Yeah, I'm going to say something really terrible. This almost kind of reminds me of when DSP used to beg for his taxes. It's like, guys, I need money for my taxes, or I'm going to lose the house. And then you would have people like with the username Save That House.
Take my chances in terms of getting across the border. Right now, I'm maybe 5 kilometers away from the border with Hungary. Over the last 2 days, I rode my bike just about 1,300 kilometers from Kharkov all the way here to the border. And my intention is to cross the border, get to Hungary, and in Hungary, I'm going to ask for political asylum. Now, why Hungary? And why ask for political asylum? Very simple. You see, when I don't show up at my court date on Wednesday, the day after tomorrow, there will be an arrest warrant issued for me. Now, of course, this arrest warrant, they will presume that I left the country, so it will become an international arrest warrant. Now, the European Union, which is allied with Ukraine to its perdition, as many of you know in terms of the European economies, well,
Okay, I'm going to say something. I actually think this was probably a smart idea, provided that he scheduled this video to go live after he crossed the border. I think because otherwise, like, we wouldn't be watching this and no one would know. He would have just disappeared into a black hole. At least now there's like people who can investigate this and write their congressman and try to put some political pressure.
The Europeans will comply with this international arrest warrant and they will scoop me up at the first chance. And it won't matter that it's a free speech case. It won't matter, nothing will matter except complying. If I were to go to Poland or Slovenia or Romania, all of these little gremlins of the EU, they're going to scoop me up instantly and return me to the graces of the SBU and the criminal justice system. And
Imagine if, like, Hungary giving Gonzalo Lira asylum is what, like, the final straw that gets, like, Viktor Orban overthrown by the CIA.
eventually I'll wind up in a prison labor camp. I'm hoping that Hungary, which has shown some independence insofar as these matters are concerned, of complying with idiotic EU regulations and diktats, I'm hoping that the authorities in Hungary will look at my indictment, realize that it has nothing to do with me being an actual bona fide criminal in terms of harming people or property, and it's really a strictly free speech issue, an issue of democratic speech. And I'm hoping that the Hungarian authorities will show some mercy and some understanding and grant me this political asylum. That's my hope. By the way, I don't know anybody in Hungary. I've been to Budapest, once for a long weekend. It was lovely. But I don't know anybody in Hungary. I don't have any relations with Hungarians of any sort. I dated a Hungarian girl once, years ago, but other than that, I don't have any connection to Hungary. And so I'm really going to be throwing myself at their mercy, hoping that they will see through this bullshit and realize that it's grossly unfair and it is just despicable. That's the only word I can think of. And so, yeah, that's my situation. And so as this video goes live, at the time that it goes live, I'm going to be crossing the border. And I'm going to be hoping that my name doesn't appear on any system and that I'll be allowed through. That's my hope. If my name is on some system, on some list that they have at the border, then I'll be arrested and it will be effectively a death sentence. And so I'm posting this video so that people know what happened to me if I really disappear. I'm certainly scared, sure, but fear doesn't really help the situation now, does it? You have to be clear. You have to be clear and you have to look at the options. And I've thought about this situation very, very carefully. And between the absolute certainty of going to a prison labor camp if I show up in court on Wednesday, and the slim chance that I might be able to cross the border, I'll take my chances. Some people might think that, why don't you just sneak across some empty field or something like that? That's laughable, okay? For the obvious fact that, of course, if you sneak into Europe, across some field, right? Later they're going to ask you, well, how did you get into Europe? What's that all about?
I mean, if he was black, it probably would be okay. It probably would have been fine if he was like... He should just pretend to be Muslim. He should just pretend to, be...
Your entry stamp.
Pretend that he's, from Morocco or something.
I mean, it causes all kinds of problems. I mean, I looked at the possibility, by the way. It's not as easy as you think. You think that it's just sneaking across some field. No. It's not, okay? First of all the access points between one country and the other are monitored, okay? And fairly easy. They just have motion detectors. And if anything moves, then the cameras go on and they know exactly what's going on, okay? So that's not an option. As opposed to going to Russia, Kharkov, after all, is 40 kilometers from Russia. It should have been easy, right?
Yeah, there's
the
minefield stuff.
Because all that area is mined. And, both sides, though they're not fighting in that particular area, not yet, they know what's going on. They keep a close eye on that crossing. So you can't go through it.
The Spetsnaz come into Kharkov To extract Gonzalo Lira.
Yeah. Another option that I was seriously considering was going to the front, to going to the contact line, and thinking to myself, maybe there is some spot in the contact line that is being used by civilians, refugees, going back and forth. But that turned out to be a non-starter. I was surprised. I mean, the front is over 1,000 kilometers long, but there is no real spot where you can easily move, not without a guide, not without somebody who knows what they're doing.